September 9th.
September, oh my God. Really?
Yeah.
Starting when, Monday?
No, it started this Monday.
Oh,
Past Monday. Let me mute it.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Yael.
Hi, we're the Komars. We heard you do a terrific presentation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Right, so we had to come and hear it.
I'm so glad to hear that. What a wonderful thing to hear. Who was your
The Weissers, Myra and Ira said we shouldn't miss it. So here we are.
Very nice. How long have you guys been in the community in Skokie?
We moved here about a year and a half ago.
Oh, that's so nice. Where did you come from?
Actually, 15 minutes away in Wilmette.
Oh, not too bad. That's so nice. Wonderful. Hello, Debbie.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Dan's running late, so he will join in later if he can.
Oh, wonderful.
He's kind of here, but he just so
nice. That's a long day. My goodness.
Yes, yes.
How was the Erev Shira?
I didn't make it, but I heard it was very nice. I know. I feel bad. I feel bad that we canceled class for it but the people who went said it was really lovely.
No, it sounds like it was a good choice. And I have a very fond memories of doing that as a little girl. So it's
well, you're supposed to have a bonfire and you're supposed to make a big deal and So that's what I heard. I mean, it was a difficult evening. It was very bittersweet. So I'm sure that put a cast on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Hello, Nelson. How are you?
Hello, Debbie. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Does everyone here know each other?
I
Don't know
I'm embarrassed.
Jean and Stephen
I
Komar.
should know Gina.
Right.
Right.
They just moved here about 1.5 years ago. I've learned so far.
Right.
Okay.
We show up at various things.
Well, and I'll put my president hat on and thank you all for supporting the campaign. Because I did see all of you made contributions, so thank you. Now I'll take my president hat off and just say I'm here for shiur.
Wonderful.
You just broke my anonymity.
Oh,
Nobody know we know if I'm the big anonymous or the little anonymous.
oh, that's true. That's true. Well, you can be. I'll tell everyone you're the big anonymous.
No.
How's that?
I'm not that kind of guy.
It's such a perfect joke because I think we're gonna talk about what's in a name.
Okay.
I always
Oh,
am
yeah.
so curious
Yeah.
who the anonymouses are. I love poring over those campaign letters, and when there's like 12 anonymouses.
I know, but there are some people
And
who
they're all related.
there are some people who really, it's very important to them that, there's some people that it's important that their name be listed. And then there's other people that if you don't list my name, I don't want people to know. People have very strong feelings.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yes,
Everybody gets us mixed up with the Children's Hospital from the University of Chicago.
Oh,
with
that's
the-
true.
Or with an ER. And I
Okay.
always say it's not us.
That's true. You would be like gazillionaires or
Right,
something,
right,
right?
It's not us.
that's funny.
Your sons did the Kabbalat Shabbat last summer?
Yes,
They
were
did.
wonderful.
Those
They
were my
Well, matter of
boys.
fact, I mentioned that to our granddaughter, and she says, I know those boys. I was in the NCI group with them.
The NCSY
Oh,
one, right?
okay.
And she said she'd been to their home, your home.
I'm delighted to hear that. That's wonderful.
It's a small world. I mean, now she, is just turning 23 and she has a 20-month-old baby and is working full time and still going to HTC. So I TI. We range the age and orthodoxy.
That's wonderful. I hope you get to see the baby.
Oh, we do.
We do.
We spent Passover with, they live in West Rogers Park. And what blew my mind the most was that here's this little baby calling my son, who I refer to as the boy, Grandpa.
Yeah,
Just cracked me up.
it's,
Being
I
our
have
great-grandchild.
a 21-month-old grandson, and I will tell you, nothing is better. It is the greatest
It
thing in the
really
world.
is.
It is such a pleasure.
I delivered my granddaughter by mistake. And it just happened that way. I was there.
Whoa, that's wild.
Right. And I'm not a midwife, and I'm a biologist, but not a midwife.
How did that happen?
Well, Tim was teaching at Valparaiso, and he was out of town, and I knew his wife would go into labor, and because she was early, and I figured I was going to be in Valparaiso, an interesting place. And first you go to the doctor's office, and the doctor was out of town, and they said, you go to the hospital, we'll find a doctor. And they found this 85-year-old man who came into the room, and he said to me, and you'll scrub and pull and I'll manipulate. And that's what I did. So
Oh,
Sarah and I have been very close ever since then.
That's a beautiful story.
But not only is it true, when Sarah was having baby Golder, her mother was in the room with her because, of course, her husband couldn't be in the room. And afterwards, I said, wasn't this the most exciting thing that happened to you? And her mother looked at me and said, no. And I was this biological thing happening. And so it was interesting. But Sarah and I have been very close.
Wow, that's amazing. What a connection. I can't imagine. I worked as a chaplain at the hospital here in the fall, and it was very fun to be on the other side in a delivery room, like not to be in pain and sweating and pushing a baby out, but to watch someone else do it. I enjoyed
What
that.
hospital is
Um,
that? Yeah.
it's called Lincoln Hospital. It's one of the big hospital systems here in Philadelphia. It was amazing. You don't often get called to the delivery room because chaplains are usually called for sad things, but every once in a while, and it was fun. Wonderful. Well, we're so happy to welcome our newcomers, Jean and Stefan. Is that how you pronounce your names? Okay, good. And everyone else, nice to see everyone again. I missed you guys last week.
We're still here. I thought you didn't have to watch us eat, so I turned off the camera.
I hope it's something delicious. So this week is the last week in Vayikra. I know Tamar is really disappointed to leave Vayikra behind, as am I. It was it was not as gory as I thought it would feel. But I'm excited for some new topics. And I was thinking about what to teach this week, and I found this sort of interesting little Rashi tucked away. And so I thought we'd take a look and think about some of that. So at the end of Parsha Bechukotai, so really the very end of the Sefer, after we've just been told that if we do the right thing and we walk in God's ways, then God will walk with us and we'll have this beautiful relationship. And then we read the Tochacha very quickly and quietly, and we say, right, if we don't walk in God's ways, all kinds of very terrible things will happen to us. And then we end on this moment of mild reconciliation with God, even though none of it has happened, right? But just the theoretical is enough to make everyone anxious. And so God says, "V'zacharti et briti Yaakov v'af et briti Yitzchak v'af et briti Abraham eskor v'ha'aretz eskor." It's a pretty simple, nice pasuk, but Rashi picks up on this grammatical anomaly that Yaakov's name is spelled with a vav here, which is quite unusual. And so Rashi tells us, oh, is there a question or a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. And so Rashi tells us that the Chamisha Mekomot Nichtav Malay, that in only 5 places in all of Chumash, Yaakov's name is written with the vav instead of just the dot to indicate it's Yaakov. And it comes from a really interesting sefer that Rashi is referencing. It is called, I'm just looking for the note where I wrote it down. It's called the Sefer Milim Chaserot something, right? That it's a book just of noting extra and missing letters in Tanakh, which sounds like a sort of magical book to me. I wish that I could find the name of it, but I'm not going to waste our time here. The Midrash of Missing and Extra Letters is what it's called in English. And not only are there 5 places where Yaakov's name is written with this vav, but the Eliyahu chaser b'chamisha mekomot, that the name Eliyahu is missing this vav in 5 places. So that's what this Sefer Milim figured out. Right? 5 places Yaakov has an extra vav, 5 places Eliyahu is missing a vav. And then Rashi goes on to add his own interpretation of why that is. Yaakov natal ot mishmo shel Eliyahu eravon, sheyavo v'yevaser geulat banav. Because Yaakov took a letter from Eliyahu's name. Here it's translated as a pledge, but I think maybe as collateral is a better word. To ensure that Eliyahu would come and announce the redemption of Yaakov's children. So it sounds so simple, but I think there's actually it's a little bit wild, the whole idea, right? To picture Yaakov sort of reaching across Tanakh to pull out the vavs from Eliyahu's name and stick them in his own name and say, you can come back and have these when you have redeemed my children, is just a funny image. But also to think, Yaakov is so pre-Galut that to think of him as being able to see all the way across time and see Bnei Israel suffering in Galut and feeling the connection, right? to not just your grandchildren or your great grandchildren, but your great 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 grandchildren, and wanting to do something about it to try to get Bnei Israel to return to Eretz Yisrael, I think is just a powerful connection, through time. And why is it Eliyahu's job? Why does Yaakov take Eliyahu's vav and not someone else's vavs away? Because we know that in Sefer Malachi in Nevi'im that it's famously Eliyahu's job to return Bnei Israel to our land. Possibly because maybe he didn't die, because Eliyahu was like taken in the chariot of fire, and so we think he's still there somewhere, sort of waiting in the wings to be our redeemer. Right, the pasuk tells us, "Hine anochi sholeach lachem et Eliyahu hanavi lifnei bo yom Hashem hagadol v'hanora." Right, that I, God, is speaking here, will send the prophet Eliyahu to you before the coming of that great and awesome day of God. V'heshiv lev avot al banim v'lev banim al avotam, and he will return the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their father. And I think that when you think about Yaakov as summoning Eliyahu to this task, that last bit is very powerful, because Yaakov is the father and Bnei Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael, are the children, right? And so there's like a very literal connection there. And what is the other interesting thing about this pasuk? Did anyone notice it? This is one of the places where Eliyahu is actually missing his vav.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Isn't that, it's so perfect. It's such a funny little scavenger hunt through Tanakh. And so I think that's a beautiful midrash in its own right. And Rashi adds like this interesting twist about Yaakov holding Eliyahu accountable. But then there is a further detail that I think is interesting. There are many commentaries that were written on Rashi's commentary on the Torah, known as super commentaries. And one of them, the Gur Aryeh, who's Rabbi Yehuda Loau, the Maharal of Prague, and he writes on this. Right, it's like a layer cake, the pasuk and then Rashi, and now the Maharal on top of Rashi. He says, "V'tam hamidrash zeh ramaz lecha ki Eliyahu lo nivra rak sheyigal et Yisrael." That the meaning of the midrash is that Eliyahu is really only created to redeem Bnei Yisrael. V'ledavar zeh omed, and this is why he, is put into place in the world. ומכיוון שהוא עומד לזה, ולא היה זה עדיין, לפיכך נטל אות מאותיות שמו של אליהו לעירבון אצל יעקב. Since this was his purpose and he did not do it, right? A letter has been taken as a pledge or a collateral to Yaakov. כלומר, אליהו אין שמו שלם, מפני שכל עצמו עומד לגואל את ישראל בני יעקב. His name is not complete because his essence, what his name is supposed to represent, is the redemption of Bnei Israel, and he hasn't done it yet. And I think the reason that this really got me is that my son, whose name is David, and we call Davidi, is 5, and he has recently begun asserting himself that he does not want to be Davidi, he wants to be David. Right, the I is babyish. Nelson is agreeing I should stop babying him. And I said to him, but Davidi is like your name, it's who you are. Of course, we're trying to respect his wishes. But this idea that when you take away a letter from someone's name, you really change their whole essence, I think is very powerful. And then there's one more layer that we're going to add, the top layer of the layer cake. And what I love about this layer is that it's written by the Maharal's brother, Rabbi Chaim Luau, and he's called the Be'er Chaim. And they both wrote super commentaries on Rashi. I can like picture them at their desks next to each other, dueling it out. Because the Be'er Chaim says like, Maharal, that's nice, but let's go one step further. And he says, "Ka'avanat ma'amar zeh nireh li lefi shehavav chaser mishmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol zman sheYisrael sharivim begalut." He says, it seems to me that this vav is actually missing from God's name the whole time that they are in galut, right? Because Eliyahu is actually 2 names for God, Eli and Yah, stitched together. And so the Be'er Chaim says, Maharal, you didn't take it far enough, right? It's not that Eliyahu's essence has somehow changed with this missing and is symbolized by this missing vav, but actually, who is really in charge of redeeming Bnei Israel, right? V'hanavi hakadosh hakadosh mevaser hazeh hanikra al shmo shel hakadosh baruch hu al havav, ra'ui gam kein shehavav chaser mishmo, right? Eliyahu means my God is God. And so the Vav drops from God's name. God is the ultimate redeemer of Bnei Israel. And so while Bnei Israel is in Galut, there's something tangibly missing from God's essence. And that is symbolized by this Vav that Yaakov pulls away and says, you can have this back when my children come back to Israel. And it's a very powerful indictment, I think, of Eliyahu, according to Rashi and the Maharal, but then even of God, to the Be'er Mayim Chaim. And it's all symbolized by that one little vav. And so I thought this was beautiful, and I would love to hear thoughts or comments. And I did a little exploration to think a little bit more about, like, does your name really does it really represent who you are in the world? Does it impact who you are? If you don't live up to your full potential, does it change your name? Something I was thinking about today, because I just saw like a post on our listserv here, is that I remembered that often people change their name when they're sick, right? And they add like Chaim into their name. And in fact, my daughter is named after my father, who died very young. And so her middle name is Chaya. Like we felt nervous about just naming her after my father. We needed that like extra booster of vitality. And so I think there is sort of this idea that our name could represent us for good or for bad. And we can look at it more, but I'll stop talking for a minute and see if anyone else has something to add.
Now, my association is to going back to Leonard Cohen's song "Crack in the World," and like, which ties in with creation and the broken world and God's tzimtzum and the separation. And we always, people leave build a house and leave a wall unfinished, waiting for Moshiach. So there's a thread between all these different thoughts. That,
so like the missing vav is like the missing brick.
The missing brick, right.
That's beautiful. I like that a lot. Ami? Oh, Dan, are you talking to us? Because you're on mute.
How's that? That original pasuk is we referenced that in the Yamim Noraim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're asking for a lot of things, probably including redemption. So it gives you a different way to understand it on those days.
Interesting. And I think maybe like an empowerment to say, right, like we're holding this vav and we're doing everything we can. Now you do your part and the vav can return to its rightful spot. That's nice. Yeah, the tie into the Yamim Noraim is very nice there. There are several places throughout our canon where we talk about names. So I tried to pick only the most interesting and the most relevant. So of course, Pirkei Avot, this is the parak that many people read last Shabbat, which talks about the three crowns, the Ketarim, right? And that there's the Keter Torah, Keter Kahuna, and Keter Malchut, but that the Keter Shem Tov Ole Al Gabei Hen, right? That there's something like, I think, very important to Rashi about that missing vav in Eliyahu's name, because his good name has been not tarnished, but has been like decreased, literally, and also figuratively, by his inability to bring Bnei Israel back to Eretz Yisrael. And then, thinking forward, the Gemara in Brachot talks a lot about names. And one of the names it talks about is Ruth. So that caught my eye because of upcoming Shavuot. And there's just a lot of sort of naming tricks. And I think it's very common today, to hear about names where you say like, well, the name is this, but it also means that. And we hope that, that is what people will bring into the world. And I think the interesting question here is when the Gemara says, Menalan dishma garim, how do we know that from where do we derive that the name affects one's life, right? It's sort of like the way we name, I think I asked my daughter once, but she picked the funniest thing. Like we were reading a book about like pilgrims, and I said, oh, her name is Hope because like her parents wanted her to have hope in the world. And she picked something ridiculous like gummy worms, right? But like many of us choose names that we think will bring something special into the way that that person interacts with the world. And so the Gemara learns this idea that our name affects our life from this pasuk from Tehillim, L'chu chazu mifa'alot Hashem asher sham shemot ba'aretz. Go see the work of the Lord who has made desolation shamot upon the earth. And then in what is a very sort of common rabbinical linguistic trick, right? Al tikre shamot ela shemot. Don't read desolation, but the works of the Lord upon the earth, or the names of the people are therefore the works of the Lord upon the earth. So I think that our names are really powerful, and Eliyahu having his name taken down a notch, right, goes to his power sort of being taken away either by God or by our own actions, right? Certainly when we invoke that pasuk on Rosh Hashanah, we're also promising to do things better ourselves. And I think the best one is this last little piece. From Kohelet Rabbah, it says, right, that each person gets 3 names. Echad shekarulo aviv v'imo, right, the name that your parents name you. The echad shekarulo achirim, and the name that other people call you. And the echad shekarui lo b'sefer toledot brito, one which is called in the records of humankind, right? Like, and to me that was right, the name your parents give you is sort of forward thinking. We hope that you will create this, people who are named Nechama, that you'll give comfort and consolation to those, that you interact with. The one is the one that you sort of establish for yourself, and others call you based on what you do in the world. And then there's the one that sort of stays with you for all time. And that's kind of how I was thinking about Yaakov and Eliyahu's name duel, right? Is that they're arguing over who will be the Redeemer, or when the Redeemer will come, in a thinking backwards as opposed to forwards type of way. And the Midrash Tanchuma says that every time a person does a mitzvah, kol zman she'adam marbeh mitzvot, hu koneh shem tov la'atzmo, he earns a good name for himself. Right, and then they elaborate that everyone gets those 3 names, and they end by saying that the earned name is worth much more than all the others. Right, the name or the reputation that you garner for yourself throughout your life by doing mitzvot is the name that really counts the most. And again, that's where I see that sort of duel, right? Is Eliyahu is given his name by his parents, and he earned that name on earth with the vav in it. But to really be able to keep that vav, to keep all of God's name within his own name, Yaakov is saying you have to earn it. You have to actually do that thing that you are meant to do in this world. So I kind of fell down the rabbit hole of names and vavs and Yaakov and Eliyahu, but I thought there was just so much sort of hidden behind the surface of this one pasuk about the way that we call each other and ourselves, and the way we think about our names as representing our true intentions and spirits. Again, I open it to all of your wisdom.
It's interesting. That's a nice way to look at it, especially for Yaakov, who has kind of a silly name, right? Oh, you were holding on to your brother's ankle. Wow. It's silly, but then he gets and then he earns the name Yisrael later on in life, which is big for him. It's big for him.
Yeah, Yaakov has such an interesting name experience.
And I think just one other thing, it's also interesting when Yaakov takes this, mantle of redemption from Eliyahu, where Yaakov actually left and came back. He actually was in Galut. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason why he's like, hey, I was there. Hurry up, do your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's no good out there.
That's right. He has personal experience.
The name
Right.
Ya-
And he ultimately gets returned, right? His bones get returned at the very end.
the name Yaakov is given at his birth because he held on to a heel. But the root of the word, Akev and so on, means something quite different, which really personifies much of his dealings with everyone the rest of his life. Meant not straight. So Yaakov is emphasized in the text, but Ayin Kuf Bet is the part that seems to define him for much of his life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I don't remember. I think it was in this group that we looked at the shift from Yaakov to Yisrael, and that Yisrael was sort of like the more straightforward battle. If he could get himself there, that's right, from the sort of more deceptive, sneaky ways that Yaakov defines, right? And for Yaakov, he really had to take a whole new name to grow into that better persona for himself. Yeah, I didn't think about that, how much experience Yaakov had had with name changes and the way that names personify his, one's actions.
And when he gets his final name, Yisrael, it doesn't stick.
Yeah.
One place it's something like V'daber Hashem el Yisrael Yaakov Yaakov v'yamav hineni. It constantly goes back and forth how he's called. The other, when Avram goes to Abraham, from that point on, you never see Avram again.
That's right.
Who else has changed?
Sarai and Sarah.
Sarah goes
from
Sarai to Sarah, and Esav goes to Edom. He stays, I think, Edom after that. But Yaakov goes back. It's not just that he goes back for it. He doesn't. He doesn't mention it. He doesn't refer to himself by name. It's when God refers to him. It goes both ways. But by the time he dies, it seems like he's Israel already.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yaakov remains Yaakov most of the time, but Israel, the name Israel, goes to the people. We are Bnei Israel, and today we are Israel. So Israel stays with us, and he was back and forth predominantly. I like your point.
And Abraham, right, also in this pasuk has the hey, right, which I always learned as a day school student was, right, the hey of Hashem, right, that that's such a small letter that was so much for good, right, to be added both to his name and to Sarah's name. Yeah, that's a great point. Amazing. Wonderful. I hope everyone has a wonderful Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom.
And I'll see you next week, pre-Shavuot, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Wonderful. Looking forward to it.
Thank you,
Bye,
Yael.
Thanks for coming. It was so nice to hear from everyone again today.
Bye.
Bye.